Good morning, Olive Branch family, and welcome to our Summer Sunday online service here at the Olive Branch. And if you don't know who I am, my name is Jeremiah. I am the youth and young adults pastor here at the church. And wherever you are, we're so glad that you're able to join us, whether you're on vacation, whether you're at home, wherever you are. We're so glad that you're able to join us. Pastor Ken's going to be continuing on a series titled It's a Jungle Out There. So stay tuned for that. But before we go into that, our worship team is ready to go to lead us in worship. So have an awesome Sunday. Enjoy your summer. Enjoy your summer vacation wherever you are. And God bless.
I believe that the blood of Jesus washes white as snow. I believe that the power of the gospel makes the broken whole. I believe that the curse of sin was broken when they rolled away that stone. I believe, I believe, I believe. As I bow before you, Lord, I will rise in confidence. I will see your goodness, Lord, in the land I'm living in. And no matter where I go, and no matter where I've been, I will see your goodness, Lord, in the land I'm living in. I believe that the walls will start falling when we fall down on our knees. I believe that the lame will go walking in the blind are gonna see. I believe that the gates of hell will tremble when the church begins to say, I believe, I believe, I believe. As I bow before you, Lord, I will rise in confidence. I will see your goodness, Lord, in the land I'm living in. And no matter where I go, and no matter where I've been, I will see your goodness, Lord, in the land I'm living in. Sing it to the daughters, sing it to the sons, to every generation. Look at what the Lord has done. Sing it to the darkness, but the light has come. Sing it to the nations. Look at what the Lord has done. Sing it to the daughters, sing it to the sons, to every generation. Look at what the Lord has done. Sing it to the darkness, that the light has come. Sing it to the nation. Look at what the Lord has done. Oh, look at what the Lord has done. As I bow before you, Lord, I will rise in confidence. I will see your goodness, Lord, in the land I'm living in. And no matter where I go, no matter where I've been, I will see your goodness, Lord, in the land I'm living in. As I bow before you, Lord, I will rise in confidence. I will see your goodness, Lord, in the land I'm living in. And no matter where I go, no matter
Lord, there ain't confusion everywhere. No one seems to care. Well, I do. Hey, who's in charge here? It's a jungle out there.
It's great to have you here this morning. Great to have you part of this whole talk series that we're doing. It's a jungle out there. Our worship was great. It's so good to understand that God is in control. No matter what things are like out there, no matter how the confusion spreads, no matter the fear, anything like that, God is always in control. So important to remember. And series we're in is It's a Jungle Out There. And it's a song by Randy Newman, actually used for the series Monk. And it talks about, how crazy it is and so on. And if you aren't scared, you ought to be, and all this stuff that goes on. And of course, the series Monk is about a guy who's afraid of everything, 318 things, afraid of germs, afraid of harmonicas, and afraid of, milk, just about anything you can name, he's afraid of that. Now, in this series, one of the things that's so important to understand, we're talking about fear. Caution, absolutely. You've got to be cautious. And the book of Proverbs talks about this. Leviticus talks to the Hebrew people about this. You've got to be cautious with all kinds of things. So caution is always, always, always an important thing to remember. Fear, no. God says, don't be afraid. I'm with you. And that is so comforting to understand. No matter where we find ourselves, he's right there in the middle of it. And we don't have to be afraid. Sometimes we are, but we don't have to be afraid. We talked about how that, it's when we're at our worst. And the reason he says don't be afraid is because when we're afraid, we're at our worst. At least I am. I'm suspecting you're the same thing. So love isn't something I do well. I've been called to love. You've been called to love God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. Called to love others as yourself. But love is something that you and I don't do well when we're afraid. And that's why it's important to remember. What you want to do when you're afraid is compare, just like David did. You don't compare, the Goliath in your life, the giant in your life, to yourself and how small you are and how insignificant you feel. Compare it to God and how big he is and his greatness and his power. And that's what worship helps us to do. Now today, we're going to have a little bit of fun with something, and the title of the message is Don't Feed the Pigs, okay? And you'll kind of get that as we go on. When I was about 10 or 11 years old, my dad gave me something he probably shouldn't have given me at a time. It was an heirloom. It's a ring that belonged to my grandfather, made of gold, and had a little diamond in it. Now, it may not be that expensive of a diamond, but the significance of it is that it actually was a family heirloom. So at a friend's place, I'm probably about 11 years old, and we're having a snowball fight in the backyard. My hands are really cold, so I had this thing on my finger, and I'm shaking my hands like this, and this thing flew off into the snowdrift. Like, the snow was like probably 10 or 11 inches deep. And so I'm digging around in the snow trying to find this thing. Never did find it. So next spring, fortunately, my friend's dad is out plowing the garden, and lo and behold, he comes and he brings me this ring. He found it, and I haven't ever worn it since because I don't want to lose it, okay? Now, you've ever done something dumb with something that's valuable? Like you took your cell phone into the bathroom and dropped it in the toilet, or you're painting and dropped it into a can of paint, or something like that. Now, Jesus' famous statement that we're talking about today is, don't throw your pearls to pigs. Now, that seems quite obvious, right? And our thought is, why would anybody ever do that? Okay? I actually learned some interesting facts about pigs because I did some pig research, okay? So, people say things like, I remember a friend, who was overseas, he was in Cambodia, he says, I'm sweating like a pig over here. It's 40 degrees plus, Well, interesting thing is pigs don't sweat. That's why they like to go into mud to cool themselves off, because they don't perspire. Another saying is, it's filthy as a pig pen. Actually, pigs are quite clean. You find out that when you do a little bit of study, that they don't do their business where they eat and where they sleep. They're actually quite clean compared to a lot of animals. I mean, they don't, use their Dyson to, vacuum the carpet or dust anything. But comparatively speaking, they're clean, okay? One more fact. Pigs are smart. They're apparently smarter than dogs, and of course that means that they're infinitely smarter than cats, okay? One of the most smartest animals in the world. Now, I didn't know that, but apparently that's true. Now, Jesus knew all of this, okay? But he still said, don't throw your pearls to pigs. as smart as they are, as clean as they are, as delightful as they are, as much personality as they have, they will never see the value of a diamond engagement ring. They will never see the value of a pearl necklace. They don't appreciate jewels, okay? Now, let me read Jesus' comment about pigs in the context. The most famous message, Sermon on the Mount. He says this, "Do not give dogs what is sacred, and do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces." Now, the most obvious meaning here is that it's dumb to take something that's extremely valuable to you and limited and important and feed it to anything that comes along, which would be pigs. In our context, the context of this message, the whole thing, the dog, the pig, is fear. And that's what I want to talk about. I know enough about life, that people hand all kinds of valuable things off to fear. And maybe you are too. See, our fears seem very real to us. Like we get terrified because we're sure that something really, really bad is going to happen and we're going to lose and so on. And what's interesting is, kind of in this context, some of you are familiar with John Dillinger. Case. He was public enemy number one back in the 30s and so on, robbed a number of banks, killed a number of people, and so on. You know the story that he actually broke out of prison using a wooden gun, like he intimidated all the guards and so on, and they basically handed him the keys, and he got out of jail and went off and, robbed a few more banks, killed a few more people until he was actually captured again. And fear is kind of like the wooden gun. You haul it out, or it gets hauled out on you and holds it on you, and you're ready to hand over your valuables and hand over your freedom. Just a few words about the larger context of Jesus' words here. It comes right after some of Jesus' most memorable words that some of you love. "Do not judge, or you will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure that you use, it will be measured to you." Now, if you're not a believer in Jesus, this may be one of your favorite verses in the whole Bible. And I get that. I totally get that. Because there's nothing more obnoxious than a person who feels like they need to come in, and disapprove of other people. And Jesus' point here in saying this is this: why would you use the amazing gift of discernment that has been given by God and use it to pick at other people? Use it to lose friends? Why do people do that anyways? Well, it's basically because, they want to feel better than other people. And that helps them. Disapproval isn't about you helping somebody else. Disapproval is about you feeling better than other people. So, if you like to do that, you need to remember that. Let me mention one more thing here. In Jesus' culture, dogs didn't have the status that they do in ours, because there's a whole culture that, is centered around dogs. So if you think I'm talking about your puppy, and you sleep with your puppy every night or your dog, and your dog is your best friend, maybe your only friend, you have to understand, back in that day, people couldn't afford to feed dogs food, okay? And so dogs were scavengers, and they would come in and they would rob you. They would take whatever they could get from you. So, and the point is that dogs do not appreciate sacred things. You can't teach your dog to pray. You might teach your dog to kneel, but you can't teach your dog to pray. You can't teach your dog to take communion, and you would never hand off communion to a dog so that it could just eat it for dessert. And pigs, oh my word, back in Jesus' day, nobody had any pigs, nobody wanted them around. And you have to understand, back in that culture, back in that day, these were not like the pink little piggies, that we have around here. These were basically, some of what we see in our culture actually been banned in Ontario, which is, kind of not feral pigs, but these are wild hogs, and they come in and they destroy an awful lot of stuff. One more note. In Jesus' day, pearls were seen as the most expensive, the most precious of all the jewels. Because you couldn't just go and, dig them out of the dirt or dig them out of the rock, like you could with rubies and emeralds and diamonds. Pearls had to be brought up from the depths of the sea. And they didn't have scuba equipment back then, So people actually risked their lives to get them. And it's really interesting that Jesus only uses the word pearl in one other context. And he talks about his kingdom as the pearl of great price. It's the valuable. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But in our culture, pearls would be diamonds. Jesus would tell us, Don't throw your engagement ring to pigs. Don't throw your diamonds to pigs. And we understand that. Now, we don't take risks with something that we value, do we? This is the message that the government and the medical community, gave to us during COVID. Don't risk your health. Don't risk your life, and so on. Take appropriate steps so that this thing doesn't keep spreading. And I get that. I totally understand that. But when we see somebody taking something of immense value and risking it, we think to ourselves, why? I don't know if you remember back when Michael Jackson dangled his newborn son off of the balcony. I don't know what it was, maybe a trick for the paparazzi or something like that. You look at it now, and I'm sure he looked at it afterwards and said, why did I ever do that? Good question, okay? Because we don't do things like that. Willie Nelson, we probably have had people who we've watched who have thrown everything that they have to some sort of an addiction or whatever. Like they've sacrificed their life, they've sacrificed their family, they've sacrificed jobs, they've sacrificed pretty much everything to some addiction. And it makes sense. You don't do that. It's not smart to do that. Willie Nelson had a hit song a few years ago called "Roll Me Up and Smoke Me When I Die." Well, there are people who pretty much do that with everything. They take their careers, they take, their relationships and marriages, money, all kinds of stuff, and they kind of roll it up and smoke it in one form or another. Now, here's what you need to understand in this whole saying about pigs. Pigs are omnivores, which basically means that they'll eat fruit, and they'll eat veggies, and they'll eat snacks, and they'll eat potato chips and meat, and they'll even eat your Aunt Dorothy's, lima bean and Spam casserole, Guy who has a huge pig farm down near Las Vegas, he goes out to all the smorgasbords every day and collects all their scraps, all the leftovers, and takes them in his truck out and feeds them to his pigs. So you might want to think about that next time you have bacon and eggs. Pigs will eat just about anything, but they will not eat a trough full of pearls or diamonds or emeralds or anything else. Pigs get hungry, hangry. You may have somebody that you know who doesn't get hungry, they get hangry, and they've got a temper to them when they haven't had enough to eat. So, that's what pigs are like. And Jesus warns us about that. He said, you try to feed them something that they won't eat, and if they're hungry, they might turn on you and create a problem. So you don't feed pigs what has no value to them, no food value. Now, here's the core of pretty much everything I'm going to say this morning. Fear is an omnivore, okay? Unlike a pig, it will consume anything that you feed to it, and it will eat all the valuables in your life if you hand them over. This whole series of talks has been based on this series of TV shows called Monk, okay? So, and this guy's great, really great actor, Tony Shalhoub, and so he basically plays this guy who's afraid of everything. And what's interesting, one of the things I noticed about Monk and all these series, and I bought the series, so I've been kind of binge watching these things, that his life is centered around himself because of all of his fears. I mean, when you're afraid of everything, and you actually have a nurse that travels with you to hand you wipes, and he buys these things apparently by the truckload, he's got to get a wipe for everything, to wipe his hands every time he touches someone or touches something, and so on. And he needs protection. His life is centered around himself. And that's what fear does. Fear will center your life around you. And it will make it very difficult for you to love anybody but yourself. Jesus talked about love. He said that love is the core thing in our life. And John, one of his core disciples, says in the 4th chapter of his letter, 1 John chapter 4, he basically says, perfect love casts out fear. It casts out fear. Love is what actually throws the fear out of our lives. Okay? And I would have to say that the opposite of that is true, and that is fear casts out love. Something to think about. Now, people in our world have one of the issues that they have is with money. Money is a big deal in our world, and you know that. And so this is kind of the way I have put it. With money, we see money as basically being, a source of happiness in our life, It's a symbol of success. You get all the markers of success. It's a form of self-esteem. It's kind of the scorecard and whether or not you've done well in life, and it's a key to our significance. So it's a big deal in our world. And the first fear I want to talk about is the fear of not having enough. Now, what happens because money has this kind of status is that it, as Jesus said, he said, mammon is probably the number one worshiped idol. And people, through the years, have sacrificed all kinds of things to this, including people. Now, you think about this. If money is the scorecard, if money is revered as a sign that you've arrived and that you're successful and that you'll have, be happy and safe if you have it, and you want to have your kids be successful, and you want them to have money, you want them to be successful, and you want your grandkids to have money and to be successful, then when it has this kind of status, what that basically means is, well, if I give it away, I'm giving away my happiness. I'm giving away my success. I'm giving away my esteem. I'm giving away my significance. It's a big deal. I'm guessing that maybe for some of you, when you came to Canada from other countries, and apparently 57% of the people here in Canada, or in Markham anyways, have come from other countries to Canada, and backgrounds and so on. And it's possible that in your world, in your family and your culture, that it's a big deal. In other words, making it here and having all the markers that you've been a success, the cars, the clothes, the houses, vacations, and eating at restaurants, and having children who have made it and been a success, that makes it even bigger in your life and in your heart. The problem is, like I mentioned, you feed any appetite, including the appetite for money, it grows. It grows. And the fear of losing it, the fear of not having it, also grows. Now, it's really important to get this, that money does not deliver on its promise to do this. It will deliver for a little while. It'll deliver, for you long enough for you to get addicted to it. Now, if you're not a follower of Jesus, then what I'm going to say may not apply to you. Okay? If you are, with follower being the key word, Jesus says that if you are going to follow him, that to revere anything else and replace him with anything else, including money, is to make that an idol. And the problem with idols is that idols lie. Idols are just dead stuff. They can't answer prayers. They can't walk with you when you're going through a difficult time. And what can happen in your life is that your fear of not having enough can cause you to give away what is truly valuable in your life and lose that. And that's not something that you want to do. That's not something that you want to do. There's another fear that I think people throw a lot of valuable stuff at, and it's the desire to be popular. It's the desire to be sought after. It's the desire to be followed. And a lot of times in our world that comes, in things like Instagram and TikTok and things like this. If it's to be followed at work, to be successful at work, it's the desire for promotions. If it's sports, it's the desire, not just the desire to win, it's the need to win, If you're in your 40s or your 50s, it could be the need to cling to your youth and so on, and still look cool and still be young and so on. It's the fear of insignificance. It's the fear of being average. It's the fear of aging. It's the fear of being invisible. It's the fear of nobody noticing you. It's the fear of not meeting the expectations, of your parents or the prophecies that they made over your life that you were going to be great, that you were going to be the star, and all the things like that. And in terms of feeding the pigs, this pig, I'm telling you, is insatiable. You can feed everything to it. You can feed it your dignity, and you can feed it your soul. You can feed it your whole value systems and your integrity and everything that you know is right. And I'm telling you what it will do. It will oink and demand more. Okay? Jesus called this saving your own life. He said, if your goal in life is to save your life, to save your youth, to try and be noticed by everybody, to be followed by everybody, to have all this stuff, he says, you will lose your soul. You will lose your life. It's impossible to have everybody see you as you want to be seen, as smart and desirable and attractive and worthy and talented and so on. And you will lose your life if you chase this stuff. You will lose your soul. It's very dangerous Very dangerous thing. And when it's all over, you see, you'll just be another statistic. It's exactly what you'll be. And someday, I'm guessing, when you're a little bit older, you're going to groan and you're going to think to yourself, oh my word, did everybody notice how into myself I was for all those years? There's another fear that I've seen people feed a lot of valuable things to, and it's the fear of being alone. The fear of being alone. Here's what I believe. See, I believe that we were created with a desire to be loved by somebody else and have a forever love, a love that always lasts. You know, to be known by somebody, fully known, and yet fully loved by them at the same time. To be held by them when we're sad and when we're afraid. To be valued when we still feel worthless about our lives and worthless to other people. And I'll tell you what happens. And I know because I felt it. When you see love like this, okay, and you're in your 20s or 30s or 40s or 50s or 60s, whatever you happen to be, when you see love like this, you get this ache right about here. And you think, oh, if I only had that. Now, having said that, okay, there is kind of a desperation for being with, having somebody to be with. And I'm telling you, if we give in to this desperation, we will throw everything that we value at it. We will. I did some research on this and found out that right now in North America, there's an estimate of about 2,500 dating websites. And there's 1,000 more being added every year. Worldwide, apparently, there's over 8,000 of them, okay? And I'll tell you, I've worked with a lot of people, and I've married a lot of people, and I've watched people go through relationships and watched friends go through relationships. And there are a lot of worse things than being alone. Some of the most lonely people have somebody that sleeps next to them every night. Dealing with this longing to love and to be loved and to value and be valued and find intimacy and find togetherness is a good thing. But I'm telling you, when fear and desperation get into the mix, man, we will throw everything at it. Now, here's what I've noticed. When this happens, we lose our ability to make really good decisions. Fear causes us to make our worst decisions, okay? And when we're desperate, we sacrifice our core values. We sacrifice, the difference between what's right and what's healthy and what's unhealthy. And truth and authenticity and a heart for God. All this gets sacrificed. And what happens in this process is that we trade God off. We throw our valuables to pigs. We trade God off to satisfy this fear and this need to be with people. And this happens so incredibly regularly, okay? It's sad. Most people who follow Jesus, even at a distance, would say that they want God's blessing on their marriage. They want God's blessing on their relationship. And yet, what happens many times is we take an unblessed path to get this, and so we make our decision, and we don't even ask God what His opinion is. We take all these detours to get there, and then, okay, God, I've made my decision. Now come and bless me. Well, He'd like to help us. He'd like to help us make really good decisions. Don't get me wrong. God cares about our happiness. God cares about, our companionship. But what He's looking for is not 6 weeks of happiness or 6 months of happiness. He wants to bring us into a lifetime of happiness. And you may throw your pearls to pigs if you get desperate or afraid in this arena. Now, there's another fear that I think has probably had a lot of pearls thrown to it, maybe more than any others. And it's the fear of what other people think. You ever had that happen? Where you're afraid of what people think and whether they think you're politically incorrect or whether they think you're a slob or whatever. People will spend their lives cleaning their houses and waxing their cars, to try and impress the people that come and impress people with our value systems and with what we have. What we are not called to do is to throw what is right and what is true and what is authentic away because we're afraid of what other people will think about it. Now, we have to live in a culture of people. It's not like we can just live like nobody else exists. Nobody does that. Nobody wants to do that. But we live in a world system, and this is so important to understand, that demands conformity more so than ever before. People talk about, we're so much more broad-minded now. No, we're not. It's gotten more and more narrow. See, tolerance used to be basically, I think you may be totally wrong and I disagree with you thoroughly, but I honor you, I like you, I respect you, even though I don't agree with you. what it has come to mean in our world is basically nobody's wrong. Like it's actually wrong to say that you think that somebody else is wrong and what they're doing is wrong. You're called a whatever, in our world. It becomes about political correctness. And so if the government says that it's okay, and that if the bigger community of people say it's okay, well, it's illegal to say it's not. And it's a really twisted system. Now, please understand, you and I are not being asked to judge the world. Jesus said, don't do that, okay? You don't need to do that. He said, there comes a place where you need to, basically take care of business inside the church, but it is not your job to judge the world and condemn the world. Even Jesus said that he didn't come to condemn the world, but basically to save it. But if you throw your pigs to fear, and if you're unwilling to take a stand, if you're unwilling to say something is wrong if it's wrong, then what do you have left? Because you sacrificed your integrity. I don't know if you've seen the movie Lincoln, came out a few years ago, but the U.S. Congress, it reflects the period of time, about 4 months, when the U.S. Congress was faced with basically a vote to abolish slavery, okay? What is shocking to me in this movie is that this whole thing is passed by only a narrow margin. And unless, some of the people had gone out and done some work behind the scenes, it probably wouldn't have happened. There are some very progressive states, from very progressive political parties who vote against it, say horrible things. And their vote is right there for all the people to remember, this is what this person said, this is what this person voted on, this person voted against freedom for people, this person voted against freedom for people. And it's all there. And I'm telling you, friends, our voting record is there too, in terms of what we believe and in terms of what we are willing to take a stand on. It's really important to have the courage to not, give in to the fear of what other people have to think. What people say about you or think about you or how they shun you or whether they even shame you lasts for a very short time. But I'm telling you, eternity goes forever. And you want to be on that side of the equation. Feed an appetite, and it grows. Feed a pig, and it grows. And I'm telling you, I think the largest pig, especially in our time in life, biggest consumer of time and effort and emotional energy, has been the fear of sickness and death. That's pretty much ruled our world for the last 2 years, hasn't it? Pandemic stole 2 years. Bam, they're gone. Everything shut down, markets shut down, schools shut down, hospitals shut down whenever, all the other things that they were doing and so on. And we will all remember March 20th, 2020 as the time when all of a sudden the world kind of hit a brick wall and everything shut down. Given how COVID was spreading and how many sick people there were and how many people died, I understand why that had to happen. Something had to be done, something drastic to stop the spread of the pandemic. Now, here's what you and I face at this juncture, and that is, how much more of our lives are we going to feed to the pig? How much more? Specific, pervasive fear that we have with COVID, and it's still there, is the fear of sickness and death, isn't it? And I understand, this stuff was, promoted all through our homes. It's been aired, every day we got the statistic of how many people died, how many people were sick, and so on. But you have to reflect also some of the other stats. For example, every year 2,000 people die in automobile accidents, and another 20,000 people die in accidents in their home, okay? So you have to kind of figure that out and put it into perspective. Living is dangerous. Just is, It's lethal. Your chances of dying keep hovering around 100%, And if you encase yourself in bubble wrap, and you hide in your home and stay away from everybody else, you're still going to die sometime. And you could still slip in the bathtub and smash your head. The fear of death is normal. No one chooses death. But listen to what the author of Hebrews says. This is very revealing. Listen carefully. Because God's children are human beings made of flesh and blood, the Son also became flesh and blood. For only as a human being could he die. And only by dying could he break the power of the devil who had the power of death. And this is what I want you to listen to. Only in this way could he set free all who have lived their lives as slaves to the fear of dying. Only by dying could he set free. Set free. That's God's goal for me. It's God's goal for you, is to be set free from living as a slave to the fear of dying. Fear, worry, anxiety, I'm telling you, is not something that you want to feed your life to and feed your valuables to. And tell you what, this fear sabotages our calling. And maybe it has to do with the other pearl that Jesus talked about, the pearl of great price, the pearl of the kingdom, the pearl of seeing that everybody has a chance to hear about Jesus and have their lives changed. I want you to think for just a minute about who has been identified as the enemy in our culture. And this was, back in 2020 when this thing first happened. It's other people, okay? For 2 solid years, the message has been avoid them. Don't go into their homes. Stay 6 feet away from them. Don't touch them. Don't touch anything they touch. Don't get close to them. Hide, because they could be carrying cooties that will kill you and kill the people you love. That's been the message, okay? Now think about this in terms of Jesus. And we're told to live like Jesus, right? You imagine Jesus saying to the 10 lepers that came to him one day, no, stay away. I can't touch you. I can't talk to you. I can't be with you. I could get leprosy and die. It's not the way he acted. It's not what he did. Now, I'm not making light of this, okay? I understand, this whole thing been very contagious and we have to be careful. What I'm saying, though, is that the fear of dying can turn you into a slave of fear. And I'm saying that at some point, we need to let Jesus free us from the fear of dying. God's mission is people. And if you're afraid of people, if you can't go near people, if you won't talk to people, you won't touch them, you won't touch anything that they touch, what are you going to do about that? Because Jesus stepped out of heaven. He came here to give his life and set people free from the fear of death. That's why he came. Jesus gave his life for people, He narrated everything that we're supposed to be doing on his plan. He says there are 2 things that you need to do. You need to love God with all your heart and soul and mind. And you need to love what he loves, which is people. Love others as you love yourself. Not like love yourself first, and if you have anything left, if you're not too afraid, go out and love them. We're called to love other people as we love ourselves. And in case we still didn't get it, Jesus said, this is my command to you, said to his disciples, love one another. You can't love and be separated and distant and afraid of other people, okay? Caution, of course, within reason. But when fear causes us to treat people like the germs that they might carry, that just doesn't work, not in the kingdom. According to Jesus and those who followed him, there apparently are things worse than dying. Did you realize that? And apparently things that are worth dying for. So, these are the 5 piggies, okay? Fear is a pig with a gun that demands your valuables, okay? And it will do that for everybody. The 5 little pigs that we've talked about, the fear of not having enough, the fear of insignificance, the fear of being alone, the fear of criticism, the fear of sickness and death. And we have been called to live for more than that. Here's the way it works, If what you believe, if your core value system, if your mission in life is not worth dying for, the chances are it's not worth living for either. You ever read what Paul did to kind of carry out the mission that God called him to? Man, he risked his life just about every day. 5 different times the Jewish leaders gave me 39 lashes, which basically means 1 lash short of killing you. Like these were brutal. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked. Once I spent a whole night and a day at adrift at sea. I have traveled on many long journeys. I've faced danger from rivers and from robbers. And he goes on and on and on in terms of what he went through. No, he didn't have a death wish. He didn't enjoy this stuff, like, go ahead, beat me some more. I probably deserve it. And he certainly didn't enjoy being in prison because it kept him from doing what he wanted to do, which is to go out and be with other people. But Paul's point was, in this whole thing, he says, man, we follow somebody who was humiliated publicly, beaten, and then had to carry his cross up to a hill where he got nailed to it and died. Why would you think that, your life is about preserving your own life? He understood, that you don't feed your treasure. The mission of Jesus, your calling of God on your life, to fear. It's the slavery to fear that would, kills you long before you actually die. And he understood that the most popular excuse during this pandemic, well, I don't feel comfortable. Is that the goal in life? Is the goal in life to feel comfortable? Is the goal in life to survive till you die? Is that worth living for? So you and I have to decide how we're going to live, like whether or not we're really going to live, or whether we're going to let fear steal our lives. And here's what I know. I know that the devil loves fear, that he uses it to stop us from all kinds of things and keep us from living how we need to live and saying sometimes what we need to say and doing what we need to do. It is one of his primary things. And God wants to set us free. And I know that fear can be the excuse that we use to not even attempt what God is calling us to do, not even figure out what our calling is. Fear is not worth that. And I know that everyone, to some extent, is a slave to the fear of dying. And I know that Jesus came to die for us and set us free from that fear. But you can still be afraid. You can spend your whole life as a slave to the fear of dying. But it's not worth it. And I know that tossing your pearls, tossing your value system to the pigs ultimately leads to regret. See, our heritage as children of God is courage. That's how people have lived. That's how people live all around the world. Some of them face death or imprisonment or, being shunned every day. That's how they live. They live with courage. And that's what God has called us to do. And I just want to ask you to do something really specific today. Would you turn your fear over to Him? Like, would you hand it to Him? Would you name it? Would you call it out what it really is? And say, God, I want to live with courage, and I don't want to hand my valuables over to the pigs. Let's pray. God, I pray that you will help us to live with the courage that you've called us to live with. To not take the valuables in our life and just hand them over as if they're worth nothing, but to think carefully about the things that we want and the things that we're afraid of and the things that we're cautious about. Help us to be careful. Help us to be cautious. And help us to know that you are with us, whatever we do, wherever we go, whatever we face. Amen. We're going to worship, and then we're going to come back.
Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. We live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes, song we could ever sing. Worthy of all the praise we could ever bring. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. We live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation. I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation. I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation. I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken.
So I'd like to close with these pigs, the piggies, the 5 little pigs. Fear of not having enough, the fear of insignificance, of not being noticed, of not being followed, the fear of being alone, the fear of criticism, the fear of sickness and death. Those are not worth handing your valuables over to. And so live with courage, and God will be with you and give you strength. Amen.